Hello, EnderSword here again, this time with a Bronze League game, and we're going to be looking at a Terran versus Terran today. This was sent to me by Gugg, our Terran player, at the 6 o'clock position here in blue. He sent this to me after seeing me on Reddit, I believe, so a little Redditor action going on here. We've got Peacemaker in the 12 o'clock position, the Terran in the north, and he's going to be our evil opponent today, and I'm pretty sure, without trying to insult the guy or anything, he's probably like 6 years old or something like that. We'll see that throughout the course of the game. He's not a big fan of SCVs or anything. But we're going to be focusing mostly on Gugg here, as he's the one that sent it in and the one that we're going to get analysis on. The three key things that I'm going to be looking at during this game are, number one, macro. Always in these games, it's going to be macro, and that's especially true in a Bronze League game. The second thing that we're going to look at is having a tech plan that actually makes sense, is something that you can afford, and is something that actually is producing results for you. And the third thing that we're going to look at is an attack plan, making sure that you have a valid plan of attack and angle of attack into what you're doing. We're not too worried about micro or anything at this level, but attack from the right direction in the right way basically is all we're going to pin this on. So just early on here, the barracks was a little late going down. He did check this location. You should just be aware that on the ladder you can't spawn in a close by ground location, so you don't have to check that one, waste your time checking there. The gas goes up, but there's only one SCV on gas, and it's actually going to stay that way for a while. One thing that happens a bit throughout this game is Gugg does end up being very short and limited by his gas supply. So that's something we want to keep an eye on. No marine building there, no SCV or anything building here. Few seconds go by. Again, very early in the game like that, we don't want to lose 10 seconds where your barracks isn't being built. We don't want to lose 5 seconds where no marines coming out. We don't want to lose 10-15 seconds on the command center turning into an orbital. It's not a case of him not having money. He did have it at the time to produce those, but just maybe inattention, getting caught up with what your scouting SCV is doing, something like that. You also definitely don't want to be having idle SCVs lying around. Keep your eye out in this corner for idle SCVs. Know what they're doing. When you send them on a building job, just rally them back to your mineral line, and that way you're never going to actually forget about it. Now into our second point here, the tech plan. He goes for a fairly quick engineering bay here while also getting the tech lab at the same time. But there's not really enough gas to actually support teching up here while also going for the upgrade here. So early on, we're throwing down tech structures that require us to actually make choices on what we're going to do and add to it. So it's not necessarily a good idea to say rush that engineering bay out if we can't really use it right away, or maybe we didn't have to get this tech lab on so soon if we're going to just make a marine out of it and then make a reaper afterwards. Basically there is no hurry to get some of this. If you wanted to go for the reapers, you'd be better off, say, skipping this upgrade and then going right for the reaper out of these two and then putting this down. So there's just got to be an order. You don't want to be delaying yourself on when you're able to get these key upgrades, especially really key ones like STEM, because you're just going to be throwing yourself behind. The other thing here, if you're going to make this type of play, a double reaper, then you definitely want to actually be using them. That's usually something you're relying a bit on the element of surprise. You want to get them out fairly early. So once you have them out, don't be indecisive with anything. You kind of want them right on their way and going towards their target. If you're just wasting a lot of time, even if it's just 10 to 30 seconds, and it will be actually a lot longer than that, it's just not something you want to be doing, and it's going to throw off your entire plan. The whole idea of rushing them out which it wasn't too much of a rush anyway, but getting them out that early is to go in and do your attack, do whatever you were going to do. By waiting here again, these could even be seen from the high ground potentially now, so you don't really know what's up there. Waiting in this area isn't really helping. Does come in, we don't know what was going to be up there. Doesn't go right for the mineral line or anything, takes a long way around, just gives the other player a lot of time to react. Goes after the ones on gas, not getting in the best initial position. Does end up picking off a couple of these SCVs, but the whole attack could have been dealt with a lot better had he just darted immediately in for these and then kited away in this direction, as opposed to doing a loop around, allowing the other player to respond, and so on. If you were going to drop a scan in this area anyway, you may have wanted to do that before. You may have not wanted to stop here. Things like that, just are seconds that are adding up that do make a lot of difference in the long run of the game. Back at home, we see a lot of investment actually going on. We see 2 factories have gone down. Immediately, tech labs have been added to the factory. Command center has been completed here, and 2 starports are actually being added. This is a lot of investment into actual technology, but you'll notice at the time that some of this stuff is done, there's no money to actually spend on any of the upgrades. There's no money to actually spend on any of the units. We're not even building out of the barracks that we do have. So after dumping all this money into all this tech and not yet getting anything out of it, he takes his army and goes in for a bit of a push here. So I kind of want to point out this as a concept of an anti-timing. We've all heard about timing attacks, which is where you hit, say, a key upgrade, a key number of units, something where you feel this is really a point where I have a lot of advantage, I'm getting a lot out of what I've spent my money on, and I'm going to go in and attack. What he's done here is really an anti-timing. He had this army anyway. This army came out of the barracks. It was available to him quite some time ago, but we've thrown a bunch of extra money into things that we've gotten absolutely no return on. Nothing has come out of these things yet. None of this investment has been added to the strength of our army. So when we choose that as the time that we're going to go and actually commit to an attack, it's literally the exact opposite of the time you'd want to be doing it. But unfortunately for a lot of people just starting out or at low levels of play, it seems like a good time to do it because it's a time when you're not doing a lot of other things. You've got these things going, but you don't have enough money to spend on it. All of a sudden you've got a little free time on your hands, and so you decide to go in for an attack. It's the exact opposite thing that you should be doing. You've spent a lot of money and you've not gotten a lot out of it. That's exactly the time that you want to be defending and staying home. That's exactly the type of time that you're completely vulnerable. Your army is not at its strongest, it's almost absolutely at its weakest. All money that you could have been throwing into an attack has instead been invested in the infrastructure and tech path that you have, and it's just a horrible time to kind of go ahead. So it would have been much better off to either adopt a defensive posture there. If you did want to do something aggressive, poke at the front, but certainly do not make an aggressive move up that ramp. It was just doomed from the moment he left his base there. So we see that a couple tanks have come out. One of them seems to be kind of stuck here. I don't know if that's completely stuck there or not, but after a little while he just says, screw it, I'm just going to siege it up exactly where it is and not move the factory or anything like that. You can lift these things to let that out if it is actually stuck here. We see that he's going for the double Banshee here, going for the Banshees with the cloak following it. Again, a very popular choice. Interesting, he didn't like the location of that army, prefers it over here. Again, maybe thought that that was blocking the path of his tanks, I'm not sure. But 2 Banshees come out, and again we just get silence all over the place. That The barracks are being, well, they just started there. That one's being underused. The factories aren't being used. The starports aren't being used except to upgrade this thing. Now his attention is really focused almost exclusively on these Banshees here, and that's something that we want to be avoiding as well. His production, of course, is completely capped by the idea that his gas is very low. He took this other base, but we've only got one refinery there with only one SCV mining. The second geyser isn't taken, and it's really the gas that's been holding him back. He's got plenty of minerals, but a lot of the things that he can build are, of course, very gas-heavy things that are going to take a lot of those resources, and it's something that really, since the early part of the game, he's been lacking on, from leaving that unmined, maybe taking this gas a bit too late. He's oversaturated here in the main, very undersaturated here, and obviously just not taking these. Given that there's no pressure on him, he really should be taking a third, honestly should be taking a fourth at this point, given how many minerals he does have available, and should definitely be putting down supply depots to get ahead of the supply level. Here we see the same problem as the Reapers from earlier. Those Banshees got out onto the map quite some time ago, around 1330. The Stargates, or the Starports that put them into play, were built around 950. So we put down the Starports, waited about 3 or 4 minutes, got 2 Banshees out, parked them over here for a couple of minutes, and all of a sudden we're just so much later than we could have been with this attack. So when you're looking to make something like this, to actually tech up to something, you generally want to use it immediately, particularly if it's this sort of ambush type thing, or else inevitably the person's going to be completely prepared, have a turret in this position, which just happened to be the absolute wrong way for him to come in there. Instead of actually just pulling out and trying another angle for attack, did attack directly into the turret that was able to take out both Banshees. You'll notice that's the only thing in the entire base covered. It's literally the worst possible thing that could have possibly happened. So the 8-minute long plan to launch 2 Banshees into the opponent's base ultimately results in 2 Banshees that are dead. So it's not good to have that much devotion to that type of plan, delay it so long, and then get absolutely nothing out of it. It just takes a lot of your attention, took a lot of the resources that you had available. Nothing else is coming out of these. Now we've got 2 tech labs on 2 starports. He could have produced 4 or 5 Banshees out of 1 starport, let alone just 2 out of 2, and one of these could have had a reactor or not even been built at all. The opponent Banshee does come in here, does a little bit of damage, picks a couple things off, ultimately gets scanned. It's going to die here pretty soon. He doesn't figure out to run away from the Marines or anything like that. That's fine. Luckily, that does actually provoke Gugg to remember, hey, this is now mined out. Maybe I will split some things off to the main. So really, in the long run, that was actually probably a good idea because it made him reevaluate what he's doing with those. But instead of pulling off to the natural, pulls off to the hidden base over here. There's times to take a hidden base and there's times not to. Generally you want to take a hidden base when, one, you think you can keep it hidden. So that usually means not on your opponent's side of the map or in a place that they may check. Given that he just sent a Banshee through this area, you may not want to be along that path. It's likely where he's going to send a drop through or something like that as well. But also you want to keep in mind that hidden is often synonymous with not defended at all. So this little task force of a Viking and a Raven is going to come over here, and there's nothing defending this base at all except for the fact that it's a planetary fortress by itself. Note again, he's not actually taking either of the gases. You would have been much better off if the third base was actually just in the natural location, or if you wanted to get greedy, go for the gold base. There's really no reason that this gold base can't be taken. No one's ever contested for these two towers. You could get siege tanks up there, and then everything is defended by your army, which is frankly just a lot bigger than the opponents at this point. There's no reason to take a hidden base in this location. You're really just offering it up to something like this, where an auto turret can pretty much wipe everything out. So we do kind of go in for the final push here, and it's likely going to be the final push, given that for the entire game the red players stayed under 20 SCVs. But we take, again, the worst possible angle of attack. Decides to just hug the wall completely by the base, where we already know there are siege tanks. Doesn't really get a good view of the high ground here. Sieges up in an area directly below the siege tank, and ends up losing the good majority of this army to this force. Loses the tank there, kind of blasts the hell out of stuff there. If he got one more shot off, he would have lost his store as well. These two tanks were kind of on their last leg. Really just loses a huge amount of army, and it's just because he came in through this corridor instead of coming in through this corridor. Try obviously not to do that. In this game, it wasn't even close. The red player just was never competitive at any point during this game, but there are going to be games that you just completely lose outright, just because you came up this side as opposed to this side. You know that there's things on this high ground. You know that there's things that are going to be guarding this. It's just a horrible location to attack from. So it's the type of thing that is going to cost people several games. Even here with such a huge army, probably had like a 6 tank advantage, Thor advantage. His bio army was like 3 times the size. Total supply was 3 times the size, and we end up down to this, where SCVs are actually going to kill off the bio force and leave only 2 tanks in the area. Reinforcements were really slow coming on. That's not great. Again, checking in with the hidden base over here, only 3 SCVs left out of about 12 that went over there. Isn't exactly great. The main is mined out, and these haven't been reallocated. This one gas still only has 1 thing on it. These aren't being rallied up. That siege tank just got stuck, and we said, screw it, and just leave them there. Obviously, blue wins this game and was winning this game hands down no matter what, but all your opponents aren't going to be like this, and you're going to face slightly better people. If you had faced anyone that was even within 25 to 50% of blue's skill level in this game, then the game would have been cost at several points. When he threw the Reapers away, it was pretty bad, got a couple kills out of it. Threw the Banshees away, pretty bad, and didn't really get anything out of it. And then throwing away almost this entire army. If there was even one more siege tank up here, I would venture to say that it would have been completely repelled. Likely still would have gotten this planetary fortress down here killed, but this army would have been completely held off if there was just one more siege tank up there, couple more marauders, something like that. He just wasn't concerned about the angle of attack, and that's something that does need to be done. You don't need to worry a lot about micro until you're in a much higher league, but just the basic way that you actually enter a battle does make a big difference, and it is something that we have to pay attention to. So overall here, obviously Gugg steamrolling his opponent, but everything could be vastly improved by improving macro, making sure that we're actually producing out of the structures that we have. You'll notice he actually imposed a self-restricted 2 air units at a time. I'm building 2 Banshees, then I'm building 2 medevacs, and in the entire game, each of these starports made 2 units. You obviously want to continually produce out of there. Factories want to be producing more tanks, more Thors, things like that. And the barracks should really just be pumping Marines the entire time, no matter what, especially when you're at thousands of minerals left. The tech path problems. Early on, he was getting himself into gas trouble by going with tech labs plus this engineering bay plus Reapers very early on had to make a lot of early tech decisions that can end up costing you a game, and then a little later on ends up teching too much with too many things at the same time, while then simultaneously attacking into your opponent. Attacking while you're teching too much puts you just in a very weak position, and I like to call it an anti-timing. The third thing, obviously, just attack plans. When you get those key units out to Reapers, go, attack, don't wait. You can't just wait at the bottom of the base, you can't wait in your own base, you just have to go. Banshee's out, cannot be waiting over here for 2 minutes, cannot be waiting over here for another minute, and when you do go in, don't just blindly attack on, say, a missile turret. Bounce around, see what's available, don't lose them. And of course, in the end, as I beat to death, do not just come right down a corridor that you know completely has siege tanks all over it. You're going to lose your entire army and ultimately lose the game more times than not. Did come out ahead here, could easily gone the other way, but I hope that is helpful, and thanks for watching.